What if one AI didn't try to solve your hardest problem alone, but instead split into a whole team, handed each piece to a different agent, and ran them all at the same time? That's the strange, powerful idea behind GPT 5.6 new, Ultra Mode. On the 26th of June 2026, OpenAI announced the GPT 5.6 family. And before we go anywhere, the honest caveat up front, this is a limited preview. It is not generally available. According to OpenAI and multiple major outlets, the models went out to only about 20 organizations, and access is gated. So everything we're about to explore is real, but most people literally cannot touch it yet. Hold that thought, because it matters more than you'd expect, and it changes how you should read every benchmark in this video. Let's meet the family first. There are 3 tiers. VentureBeat Sol is the top dog, built for the hardest problems, complex coding, security research, the stuff that breaks lesser models. Terra is the workhorse for high-volume business tasks, customer support, internal tools, document analysis. And Luna is the cheap, fast one for everyday work, like summarizing, drafting, and routine automation. Quick price note, because it's genuinely interesting. Terra runs at $2.50 per million input tokens and $15 per million output. That's exactly half the price of the previous generation, GPT 5.5 for comparable work, half for a business running customer support or document analysis at scale. That's not a rounding error, that's a budget cut. Sol sits at the premium end, $5 in, $30 out. Luna is $1 in, $6 out. And there's a secondary report of a reportedly 1.5 million token context window. Reportedly, I'm flagging the soft numbers as soft on purpose because the whole point of this channel is telling you which claims are load-bearing and which ones aren't. But the headline feature, the thing that earns the title of this video, lives only on Sol, 2 new settings. The first is called Max Reasoning Effort. In plain terms, it gives Sol more time to reason deeply before it answers. More internal deliberation, fewer snap judgments. The second is Ultra Mode, and this is the one worth slowing down for. Here's the core idea. Normally, when you give an AI a big task, a single model tries to carry the whole thing end to end. It plans, it writes, it checks, it fixes, all in one continuous stream of its own thinking. Ultra Mode does something different. Instead of one agent doing everything, it coordinates multiple sub-agents in parallel. Think of it less like a single brilliant freelancer and more like a manager running a team. Let me make that concrete, because sub-agent orchestration sounds like a buzzword until you picture it. Imagine you hire one extraordinary consultant to renovate an entire building. Smart as they are, they can only do one thing at a time. Plumbing, then wiring, then drywall, then inspection, in sequence. And if they get tired or lose the thread halfway through, the whole job wobbles. Now imagine instead a general contractor who hires a plumber, an electrician, a drywaller, and an inspector, and sets them all working at once, each on their own piece, then pulls the results back together at the end. That second model is Ultra Mode. The manager agent breaks a complex multi-step job into parts, dispatches those parts to specialized sub-agents running in parallel, and then integrates what they send back. Why does that beat a single agent on big tasks? 3 reasons. 1. Parallelism. Independent pieces of a problem can run at the same time instead of waiting in a line. 2. Focus. Each sub-agent works on a smaller, narrower slice, so it's less likely to drift off course or lose track the way one model grinding through a giant task can. And 3, and this is the subtle one, efficiency. When you give each agent a tight job, you often spend fewer tokens overall reaching the answer, because nobody's rereading and re-reasoning over the entire mountain of context every single step. Picture a long coding job. A single agent reloads the whole problem into its head over and over, while a team of focused sub-agents each carries only its own slice. Less repeated reasoning, less wasted compute. And that efficiency claim is exactly where OpenAI points to evidence. So let's look at it, with the proper labels attached. These are OpenAI's own self-reported numbers. Independent verification is pending. On OpenAI's self-reported terminal Bench 2.1 results, GPT 5.6 Sol in Ultra mode scores 91.9%. Plain Sol, 88.8. Claude Mythos 5 sits at 88.0, and Terratai's Claude Fable 5, both at 84.3. So on OpenAI's own benchmark, Sol narrowly tops Claude Mythos, and Ultra mode pushes it higher still. Narrowly. Vendor reported. I'll keep saying that, because a 0.3 of a point gap on the maker's own test is not the same thing as a settled fact. The more telling story, though, is the efficiency one on GeneBench, a biology benchmark. OpenAI reports that Sol beats the older GPT 5.5 while using fewer tokens. And on ExploitBench, a cybersecurity benchmark, OpenAI says Sol is competitive with Claude Mythos while using roughly a third of the output tokens. Sit with that, matching a strong rival's results on a hard security task while spending about 1/3 of the output. If that holds up under independent testing, that's the real argument for orchestration. It's not just can it score higher, it's can it reach the same answer with dramatically less work. In a world where you pay per token, doing more with less is the whole game. That's the difference between a research demo and something a company can actually afford to run all day. Now the part where I keep us honest, because this channel doesn't do hype laundering. First, the gating. GPT 5.6 is a limited preview restricted to a small set of government-approved customers. It is not banned, and it is not generally available. It's gated. During the preview, the US government approves access on a customer-by-customer basis. This isn't a quiet rollout detail, it's the actual headline. According to OpenAI and multiple major outlets, OpenAI shared the models and its release plans with the US government before broad release. The Office of the National Cyber Director and the Office of Science and Technology Policy pushed for a phased release, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick called OpenAI to warn against proceeding without broader agency sign-off. Sam Altman said, and I'm quoting directly, "We've made clear to the US government that this is not our preferred long-term model, and will work with them and others in industry to achieve a more sustainable approach for future releases. A broader general release is hoped for in the coming weeks, a couple of weeks later, but for now, the gate is the story." T here is precedent here too, and it's reported, so I'll flag it as such. Reportedly, Anthropic presented a model called Mythos in April 2026, and the US government then reportedly forced Anthropic to pull its Claude Fable 5 model offline. Fable 5 is the Claude model the government pulled. That move reportedly set the regulatory pattern that shaped these GPT 5.6 restrictions. OpenAI, for its part, says Sol launches with its most robust safety stack to date, with strengthened protections for higher risk activity, sensitive cyber requests, and repeated misuse. Read that as the capability and the caution are arriving together on purpose. When a frontier model can do real security work, the release process starts to look less like a product launch and more like a policy negotiation. So who actually wins? Here's the genuinely honest take. On OpenAI's self-reported Terminal Bench 2.1, Sol comes out ahead of Claude Fable 5. But on several independent public benchmarks, Fable 5 has led, scoring SWE Bench Pro at 80.3, Live Code Bench at nearly 90, that's 89.78, and Humanity's Last Exam at 59%, though at a premium list price of $10 and nearing 50 out. So the winner depends on the benchmark and on who's even allowed to use the model. When the vendor picks the test and most people can't run their own, Best is doing a lot of lifting. So what should you actually watch for? 3 things. Watch for independent benchmarks. The moment someone outside OpenAI can run Terminal Bench, GeneBench, and ExploitBench themselves, we'll know if that efficiency edge is real. Watch the gate, whether that broader release actually arrives in the coming weeks, or whether government sign-off keeps Sol locked to a handful of orgs, and watch the pricing, because Terra at half the cost of GPT 5.5 is the part of this launch that touches the most people the soonest. My real point of view? Ultra Mode is the most interesting idea in this launch, and it has almost nothing to do with the leaderboard. The single model era is quietly ending. The future isn't one giant brain answering everything, it's a coordinator marshaling many smaller, focused workers, and being judged not only on whether it's right, but on how cheaply it got there. That ExploitBench efficiency number, roughly a third of the output tokens, is the tell. But right now it's a preview, gated to roughly 20 organizations measured mostly by its own maker. The architecture is the news. The scoreboard is a footnote until someone independent gets to run the test. Stay curious, this is AI Unpacked.